Welcome back. So now we're going to look at part B and C for problem number 7, not number 1, for our previous frequency distribution. So if we wanted to create a histogram and a frequency polygon, a general way to describe those would be a bar graph and a line graph. But those aren't the proper definitions for these because there are some specific parts to them that make them different than a true bar graph and a true line graph. So we're going to see what that looks like. Now, the first thing we're going to want to do with our histogram is we're going to describe our scales. And we got to do it for both of them, but let's describe the scale for both the vertical and the horizontal scales for our histogram. Now, our values, our frequencies are always going to go on the vertical side. So we want to make sure that we have enough dashes. Now you can kind of see we have a grid here to help us draw a little bit better. So let's just count how many boxes we got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, if we go back to our frequency polygon, the highest frequency was 10. So we can't just use a 1-to-1 scale because we won't have enough room on the top end. So we're going to have to scale it by whatever we want. So if we went by 2s, then that's going to double everything and we're going to get up to 16, which is more than enough. So going by 2s should be fine. So let's just scale it by 2s. And there we go. So we're up to 16. Now, obviously, we do want to label our graph as well. So frequency is on the left side. Now, across the bottom, we want our different values. Now, remember, the values were from 0 to 5. So, and because we want to create bars for our histogram, we're going to put the labels in the spaces, not underneath the edge. So it's kind of particular when it comes to doing this. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so we're going to, we can label it down here whatever we want. Now, as far as looking at the problem, remember, we're looking at tasks for preparing for summer. So if we wanted to call it task or the number of tasks completed, that might be a good way to describe it. So let's call it that. Okay, so now we have our graph, we have our scale, we have our values and everything listed. So now it's just a matter of creating bars. So remember, the first bar went up to 10. So we're gonna put that bar right next to the vertical axis, and we're gonna go up to 10. The next one, because I've already forgotten, was 7. And then 6. And then 4. And then 2. And 1. So that should be our histogram. Now, the nice thing about the frequency polygon is that it's very, very similar as far as the vertical scale. It's going to be exactly the same. So we can just put that in real quick. And we'll label it. Now on the bottom, we had the spaces labeled over here on the frequency polygon. Now we do want the dashes. So we're going to start with our first dash right there, and then we'll put our values right underneath. And so now instead of drawing bars, we're going to put points on our graph. So we want to put a point at 10. Next one's going to be at 7. Next one's at 6. And then 4. And then 2. And then 1. So there's our points. So let's connect the dots. Let's go back to elementary, connect the dots. Now, if we just left the line floating in space like that, then it would be a line graph. But we want it to be a frequency polygon. Now remember what a polygon is. Polygon is a simple closed shape. And right now we got a floating line in space. So if we want to close this, what we're going to need to do is bring this dot here and bring a line down. And I usually like to have it go right through where the two axes meet. You know, sometimes you can extend it beyond or whatever if you want, but if you stop right there, that's fine. And on the other side, if we pretend that there's another dash, let's just bring this down through the horizontal axis. So that is what makes it a frequency polygon. So again, no spaces though. That's a big thing about bar graphs. There's no spaces between those bars. So you do not want individual bars floating next to each other. And the same thing, frequency polygon, you need to close off the ends, otherwise it's not a frequency polygon. All right, so we'll stop there, short video, and then we'll start looking at the next example, which looks at grouped frequency distributions, which is a little bit different, but there's a lot of similarities to what we just saw. So stay tuned.